Welcome back to Crispy's Projects, and in this episode we're going to be fueling around with this Corrado TDI conversion. So some of you have seen the fuel tank that I've replaced with a far bigger VR unit, and the only problem I didn't foresee was the fuel pump. So the fuel pump size is basically the same as the Mark IV, so I've gone through different variations and I'm going to show you the way that I've done it. So it's been an amalgamation of bits and pieces and having a go and prototyping. I couldn't really tell you how many months of on and off messing around it's been, but let's go and have a look. The old pump was just too short by probably about that much, so you'd never get to the bottom of the tank. So what I'd done initially, because it's a lot deeper tank to the Mark IV, I'd originally cut the originals and just welded on. Wasn't really happy with that, so I got somebody to make me up some extensions. So that's basically a 5mm and a little bit just turned in there. It does make a lot of difference. It sits in there and it's essentially just a runner. So we've got quite a bit of movement now. So that's able to go deeper down. So the tank as it sits to the bottom, to the edge, pretty much 27 centimetres. 27 centimetres, perfect. And I also stretched this spring a little bit more just to give it a little bit more push. So let me show you what I've sort of semi-discovered. So before I rightly damage that, one thing I didn't really notice, but I did notice because I thought about it last night, that when the actual gauge went all the way down, it actually dropped off the contact patch and went down. And now I'm messing around with the resistance values on this one. I've worked it out, because when I go open circuit, so basically no resistance on the back, that's the only time that will actually drop down to 0. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to have it sat just above, actually just alter the track. So but for now I just need to get it more or less calibrated on empty rather than full for the dash, because I'm more likely going to try and run it to empty than run it to full. I've got a cunning plan for that one. So the Mark III one, it was running, was it 280, 290, and then it sort of dropped off to open circuit, and that did confuse me, but I didn't really think about it, and now I've thought about it, it makes some more sense. So what I'm going to do is, I've got two options. I can either try and move this board a little bit more down and risk damaging this, something I don't really want to do. But the only thing is, as soon as I the full stop there, that's going to change resistance values, so I'm going to be on a similar sort of problem there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little fraction of that off, because that's quite a big block where it's essentially full or empty in our case. So the contact patch is really hard to see, doesn't quite go, so it's going to go to open circuit high up. I'm just going to use a little bit of a Dremel on pretty much the top. Well, that looks like it's shiny all the way. Okay, how deep does this go? Once it goes to there, it seems to go back to about 50 ohms, so whether that is actually metallic, something underneath there, or there's resistance within the ceramic. I'm going to put a little bit of masking tape just on the edge. I think that's just underneath. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to pull that bit off. That looks like partial success. You know, we've got lots of flashy lights on there. That is registering as full. That is in full close position. So at least that's a start. So let's put that all the way to the other end of the travel. And let's go and see what happens. So ideally I want it to stop just below the white line, or on the white line. Let's see where she stops. thinking about it, that I need to know where empty is. It's not quite there, is it? Not only have we got to get it to go opposite travel, which is going to be interesting, we've also got it to have to reach up, right down. It's quite a way for it to go. So that's going to be interesting and a challenge, but let's work that out. So let's see if we can get ours to be at least semi-calibrated. Just to recap, on full on the Mark IV, on the Corrado it shows empty, and showing empty on the Mark IV on the Corrado version needs to be full. There's an easy way to do it. Those who understand resistance and how this resistance track works would have said, why don't you just take a feed off there and the resistance is going to work the other way, which is 100% right, it would do. The other thing, and this is why I've got it inside on the cardboard, I'm going to make a little bit of a template because we pretty much know from that measurement that you want it 270mm. So 270mm, so let's call the float to come this way. Can you see? Just need the float to come round the other way. So that's why I've grabbed the other Mark III float that I had. All this. Hopefully it's going to fit in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that out. Just looking at it straight away doesn't look enough. So there, we'll put that at 0. Being very vague for now. So we need about 270. 140, 150. So I've got that piece of metal, pretty much the same diameter. So when it's all the way up, it's close to that imaginary line. So I think I finally cracked it. So after a lot of messing around, I actually worked out that every time I put this to full travel down, one of the resistance wires just wasn't long enough. So what I've done is just put a little bit of an extension. So I've not used no soldering, just crimping, just to make that a little bit longer, and it's been a lot more repeatable. I'm putting fuel in and tweaking the gauge. So that's essentially what I've ended up with. Now let me explain what that does. So on the original Mark IV, pointing straight up, resistance shown empty on this. So I ended up flipping the float round. So there's all the way empty, and there's the way all the way full. Now I've had to tweak this up and down many times just to get this to sit right. And let me show you where we're up to with that, because I think this is going to be the final fitment. Oh, let's put it all in. .266 ohms, which is going to register pretty much an empty. I don't know exactly where. Let's just move that out of the way. So hopefully you can see that I've got gauge. So I've got multimeter on the resistors part. I've got a fuel line going into a container. I think there's about 4 litres in there. I'm going to have to double check. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my power probe. So power probe, that's basically got an earth, which I'm going to put to the earth of the motor. If you get it the wrong way around, you're not going to pump any fluid out. We open. So the fuel pump's working now. It's pumping it out into the jerry can. And now we've gone open circuit. Checking the resistance of the gauge and actually measuring and calibrating exactly how much we put in. So that's how much fuel I've got, which I think is about 4 litres. At this point it's going from open circuit, it's going to open circuit from when I'm emptying it. Now the weird thing is when I'm filling it, I seem to be going from open circuit 290 to 280 ohms, but when I'm emptying it, it seems to hover around 280 and then we'll suddenly go to open circuit. So I think in this period here, it's either just sticking ever so slightly, Because remember, while you're driving your car, it's actually moving. So a static test isn't particularly a great one, but we're going to have a bit of a gauge. So I'm going to go and fill this in, and we're going to see exactly where it is on the gauge when your vehicle's full, because you've just filled it up. You've got to know when it's halfway and down. So let's start there. That's going to be a good idea. Definitely relying on resistance. You always hear the stories of people go into the red, go off the red and carry on driving. It'll go for ages because that's how they set it up. Whether it's just easy in production or whatever, that it would then go open circuit and then go off the gauge, because I think they couldn't make as much position and repeatability in these, whereas later stuff is more about the algorithm and how it computes the data from the input and displays it on there. Either way, I've tested it several times, and it was about the 2 litres. The point between it went from showing nothing to went right off the gauge. So I think that's a nice level of margin. As I've always said through this project, it needs to be right where possible, and knowing how much fuel is left in the car is probably more important than knowing how much fuel is in the car. Because when you fill it up, you're just going to fill it up all the way, or know that you're putting in 20 litres, 10 litres, £2. Can you still do £2? Be nice if you can. Hopefully this will keep running on £2 for ages.